Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to RawKnux podcast. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Did you play hockey as a kid growing up in dirty Dorchester?
Dirty Dutch. No, I didn't play ice hockey. When I was a kid, I had cancer at the age of 7. So I was treated at Dana-Farber and Jimmy Fund and Children's Hospital for about 4 years. But we played a lot of street hockey. We played a lot of gym hockey, a lot of that back in this neighborhood. Yeah, I didn't play the ice hockey though. But we followed it. Chris Nyland. I remember watching Chris Nyland play for the Canadians, man. I remember that.
When I stepped on the ice, I never backed down, and I never stayed down.
And I was vicious, and I was malicious, and I don't care.
I'm alive. He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town.
Anyway, good to have you. I appreciate you taking the time. Welcome to the RawKnux podcast. My partner Tim out today. He's getting re-educated in life today. So
That's good.
Yeah, a good thing. So listen, both Boston guys, and it's funny when someone called me and said, "Hey, do you know Marty Walsh?" I said, "Yeah, I know Marty." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Oh, I think he might be getting the job as director of the PA." And I had no idea, right? It kept pretty quiet, I guess. Yeah. And it got out. And were you looking to get out of the job you were in as Secretary of Labor for the Biden administration, or did someone reach out to you and say, "Hey, geez, we got a job here. I think you might be interested"? How'd that go?
Yeah, what happened, Chris, was, first of all, thanks for having me today. It's great to be on here with you and talking hockey, and I'm excited about it. The way this happened was I was Secretary of Labor for President Biden. I had previously been the mayor of Boston. I was not looking to leave the administration. And around December, before Christmas, I had gotten a call by a recruitment agency saying that the NHL Players Association was looking for a new executive director. Would I be interested in having a conversation about it? I said, sure. I never really thought. I knew the PA existed. I knew it was a union. I tried to get some PA swag over the years because I'm a big union guy. And so I started to have conversations with a couple players. And there was a 10-player search committee led by Kyle Okposo is kind of one of the leaders, and Ron Hainsey, a former player. And I started having conversation with them and set up a series of meetings. And then after about 5 or 6 meetings, the conversation got real serious real fast. I went out to Nashville, met with some players there who were on the search committee. And then later that night, the search committee made a recommendation. They put my name up to become the head of the PA. And that's kind of how it happened. It was complete, luck, I guess you can call it, or right place, right time. Is not something that I was looking for. I didn't even really think it existed. I could get this job. But basically when I was promoting myself and what I would bring to the PA, a lot of the people before me were lawyers, and they were asking me about being lawyers. And I said, run a union, you don't have to be a lawyer. You have lawyers. And I gave my background. And I think a lot of the players liked the background of negotiating contracts on both sides, quite honestly, as mayor, building relationships and potential growth of hockey and HRR, hockey-related revenue, and really taking hockey to the next level. And I think a lot of the players like that. And I was fortunate enough to go in front of the E-Board, 31-0 vote there in front of the E-Board in Florida. One of the teams lost communication. They were in by Zoom. So it's been an incredible, interesting ride for the last 7 months.
Yeah, it is. It wasn't as close as that first mayor's race that you had in Boston, right? With Conley. It wasn't that close. So that's good. It's good to be wanted. And
it was nice. And it's good to be. I mean, I'm going around now talking to players at Fall Tour, and I've met with a bunch of players already, just reinforcing that this is a union. We have a collective bargaining agreement, and it just. The importance of the PA just isn't during the negotiation year. It's all year long. We represent players, and also in today's world, it's about helping grow the business in the game of hockey.
Yeah, and I look at certainly your background, and a lot of people don't know who Marty Walsh is when it comes to the hockey world, right? And you come in here and you work construction as a kid in Boston. You got you became the union leader. You negotiated contracts there. You got into politics, mayor of Boston. You go on to become Secretary of Labor for the United States under Biden. You have done so many things in your life, and so many different jobs. What is it, I guess, about your character that allows you to be able to? What's the thing that allows you to be able to navigate all those different positions you've held over the years?
Well, Chris, the biggest piece is I got sober at 28 years old, and prior to that, I was not in politics yet. I was a union president in my local. Actually, I was a recording secretary in my local at that time, and I had dreams and aspirations to be in politics. I wanted to run for office, and my life, quite honestly, on the outside looked pretty good because I kept up a good appearance, but on the inside, it was a mess. Drinking, blackouts, embarrassments, all that stuff. And I went to detox down the Cape in Gosnell. And when I went to detox, I say this often a lot that, I thought it was the worst day of my life, that it was only going to get worse. And I didn't realize it was probably the best day of my life, because I went down there and I learned about the disease of alcoholism. I was suggested that when I get out of treatment, I go to 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor, and jump in the program. And, I didn't know what any of that meant, but I went to AA meetings when I got out, went to about almost 90 and 90. And I quite honestly got on a pink cloud right away. I mean, life got good. I lost the desire for drinking. And then a year and a half later, I was running for a state representative in Dorchester. I was in a position in my life that I could do things. And that, keeping that one day at a time and that sobriety front and center has allowed me opportunities. I understand that, you have to be, when I was a state rep, I wanted to be a mayor. I wanted to be somewhere else. And you have to learn patience and tolerance, if you will, to some degree, listen to people, offer help as much as you can. And I've been fortunate. And I did that for 16 years as a state rep, continuous sobriety. Ran for mayor of Boston, same thing. And then Secretary of Labor under Biden. And I think, a lot of people, people who are alcoholics or drug, they're overachievers generally, and they're overachievers in life, and they're overachievers because they do anything they can for the drink and the drug. And when they get sober, they take that energy and usually put it into good use when they get sober. When people really get sober, hopefully. I've been blessed, and that's really, I think, that's one of my biggest pieces. Another piece is just listening to people, being compassionate, and be in the business for the right reason. I was in politics to help people. I got in politics to help people and try and help communities, and whether it's my neighborhood of Dorchester or the city of Boston or the country, quite honestly, when I became the Secretary of Labor. And I think that some people, when they get into politics, they kind of forget why they ran for it in the first place. And I try to stay connected to my roots, and going to meetings keeps me humble. No matter what roles I've had, whether I'm the mayor or the head of this or head of that, a secretary of the United States of America, the people that I go to meetings with, we're all the same. We're just people trying to stay sober that course of the day. So I don't view myself as the Secretary of Labor in the president's cabinet. I view myself as Marty Walsh, who happened to make it there and is honored to be there and to try and help people.
Certainly a good way to look at it. And I share the alcoholism piece with you for sure. And my life has changed in a lot of good ways too when I decided to put the drink down. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what's the most important part of your, I guess, your personality or a trait that makes you as successful as you've been in every street you've gone. Now, I'm sure you've had some setbacks in life, and not everything's been honky-dory all the time, but what's that one personality trait that you have that gets you, I get the sober piece, but
maybe compassion for others. Just be compassionate, and nobody's too beneath anyone for me to call back. Think about, how to, rather than have a fight, how do we get to a resolution? I think maybe compassion is the word I'd use. I think when I say compassion, a broad description of compassion, understanding that, that if I'm talking to somebody, whether it's a constituent in the streets of Dorchester, Boston, United States of America, or now the hockey players, just understanding that they have a story to tell, they have an issue they have to deal with, and being able to listen to them and try and help resolve it the best I can. And I think that that's one of the things. I think being fair and telling the truth. I mean, I think that that's another piece. Being honest. People don't always equate politics to honesty, but there's a lot of good people in politics and good people in union politics that are honest people that just want to be there for the right reasons.
So you get this position, you come in, you're certainly following a legend in Donald Fair, who was the head of the Major League Baseball and then NHL for years. Any pressure in coming in there and,
No, I view it like, I followed a 15-year state rep, Jim Brett, when I got elected state rep. And people used to say, "Oh, you have big shoes to fill." And then I quite just like did my job at that moment. And then when I followed Tom Menino, 20-year mayor in Boston, people say you have big shoes to fill. And somebody said to my successor as a state rep one day, Danny Hunt, I was with him and we were together as the mayor. And somebody said to Danny Hunt, "You got big shoes to fill," to Danny. And what I said was, he has his own shoes to fill. And I don't view like, Donald Fair has an amazing career in union sports, in baseball and hockey. He did a lot of great things in that timeline. I'm not looking to be Donald Fair. Donald Fair is not looking Marty Walsh to be Donald Fair. And I think that you respect the people that came before you, and you blaze your own trail. And I think that that's something that I've always looked at. I've always been told, "Oh, you got big shoes to fill in." I just, I laugh and whatever, but I always think they're your own shoes, and you're going to run things in a different way. And, Donald Fair was a lawyer and did a lot around collective bargaining. I'm not tested there yet. I'll be tested there in a couple of years in 2026. But, I come at things a little different than most people. And I think that change is good. I think Donald Fair followed Bob Goodenow. And Bob Goodenow had some very good days of the PA. And I think that, a different style than he is. And I'm different than Donald. And I think that, so the pressure really for me was, I made a commitment to the players that I'll get to know every player in the league. And that's really what I'm focused on right now, is getting to know the members of the union and explaining to the younger guys what a union is, explain to the older guys that, we can go in a different direction. So everyone has a different experience, right? Some people are disgruntled. I still hear a lot about the 2012 lockout, a lot of feelings, emotions around that. A lot of feelings, not many players from 2004. I don't think there's any players, I don't think there's any players left in 2004 lockout. So like, you can't forget that, but you learn from that. But it's like, understanding that this is a union that, we're going to make different changes in the way we do things. So that's a long way to answer your question, but I don't feel the pressure necessarily. If I don't do my job, then I'll feel the pressure.
All right. So let's say, how would you define your job as an NHLPA head now? You're not trying to outdo anybody, but coming in here, how do you define that job?
Well, I think, when I tell people that aren't connected to sports or hockey, and I tell them I'm the head of the union, their first reaction is, "Oh yeah, you represent $1 million hockey players." And that couldn't be further from the truth. And I say that because this, there are probably about 200 roughly, I might have the numbers wrong, players that are on minimum contracts of $775,000, which is a lot of money. But those players might not play a consistent season in the league. Those players have basically from the age of 13, 14 years old, dedicated their entire life to hockey. So their education put on the back burner, their life put on the back burner. They've been focused on hockey to make it to the NHL. And I think my role as the head of the PA, my number one role is the collective bargaining agreement. Obviously, that's obvious. Negotiating a contract and making sure that the league and the teams are living by the terms of the contract, and on making sure we understand the contract, we're living by the terms of the contract. We also are working on, we have a program in the NHLPA that we launched a couple months ago called Unlimit, which is an in-house professional service contract. So as players are playing, maybe getting to think a little bit about what their future might be, and help them think about what's life after hockey going to be like. We have a program, a health and wellness program, making sure the players' mental health is strong. We have graphic design program to make sure that if players want to start foundations, we can help them with graphic design. We have a health and benefit, and a pension benefit office, which obviously makes sure that their pensions are in place. They understand the impact of the pension, making sure the healthcare is there. We also have a legal department. We handle any suspensions that are given out by the league to players. We represent the players there. And then we also are thinking we're going into the space a lot more now of growing the game of hockey. We're looking at our business office and we're looking at international hockey. We're engaged in the Olympics, making sure the players can play. NHL players can play in 2026. We're looking at bringing back the World Cup of Hockey tournament, not just a one-off, but a tournament in like 2025 leading into the Olympics 2026. That won't be a World Cup. That'll be looking to see what that might be. And then hopefully 2030 and 2034 World Cup of Hockey, so that fans have an opportunity to have real best-on-best international hockey every 2 years. That's ultimately what our goal is, working closely with the NHL on that. So there's a lot to this job that we do. And I think, for me, and I've received some of these calls, when a player calls and says, I'm having trouble with whatever it is, we get them the right place, or their family members having problems, we try to get them to the right place.
So you talked about, the $1 million hockey players. People think about guys making all this money. And how do you balance then when you look at the overall league, or how are you going to balance the needs of all the star players, the Bedards, the McDavids, all that, and those minimum wage players, those guys that make short money? How do you balance that? Or how are you gonna?
The key is you treat everyone the same, and whether you're Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, or Sidney Crosby, who make the higher end of the contract, they still might have. I mean, they haven't called me, but they might have other issues that they're working on. And then the players that are just trying to make the league this year might be on a minimum contract, and it's their first year in the league. They're all the members of this union, and we treat them all the same. And I think that obviously the Sidney Crosbys and the Connor McDavids of the world, and Matthews and even Bedard, he's a young guy, so I think a lot of pressure on that kid right now. I think they should just let him play hockey. They also help grow the game. I mean, you don't have the sport of hockey. You know this better than anyone, Chris. It's not about the jersey. It's not about the team. It's not about the arena. It's really about the players. That's the personality of the league. And those are the people that are going to drive people to the seats and grow the game of hockey. And I want to make sure the players I represent are taken care of along the way, not just financially, but anything they need from us to be successful, both on the ice, but also off the ice. I mean, a lot of these players, they might not start off with a family, but they end up with a family. So if they have pressures, we need to try and help them with that.
Well, you've got kind of thrown into the fire right away with the issue in Columbus with Mike Babcock looking at players' phones and pictures on their phones. There was some, when that come out, I'm like, was it voluntary? And it looked like a couple of players kind of wanted to go to bat for him. And you had to go down there and address that and support the players. What was that like? That was kind of the first big thing you had to do.
Yeah, really.
As far as publicly.
Yeah, there was a couple of not little things. Arizona's another one. We can come back to that in a minute. The Coyotes playing in a college arena, which bothers me. We had an issue in Vancouver with skating after the season's over, when the collective bargaining agreement clearly states that when the season's over, the season's over. But the situation in Columbus was a lot different. We had heard there was different reports and different podcasts about, the coach taking the phones and downloading them. And, when we looked into it, we realized it was a little more serious than that. So myself and Ron Hainsey jumped on a plane. We went down to Columbus. John Davison, the president of Columbus, was great.
Great guy.
He let us have space in the locker room. We went in the locker room. Nobody was there. We addressed the players. And talking to the players, we realized there was another issue that we had to deal with. And that really kind of was the issue that was the impetus to what happened. After that, we met with Gary Bettman, and the rest is history. But, what I said to players is that, we're going to represent you. And, I'm not looking to get people fired and dismissed. I mean, if the situation can be fixed, we fix it, obviously. I don't know Mike Babcock at all, other than watching him over the years on TV, coaching different games and different teams. But it was a situation serious enough that we had to address it, and we did. And I have that right now, that relationship with Gary Bettman, that if he has an issue, he's going to pick up the phone and call me. If I have an issue, I'm going to pick up the phone and call him. In the case of Columbus, we had to do a little homework there before we had that call. And we actually, after we went to Columbus, the next day we jumped on a plane and we flew to New York. We met with Gary Bettman and Bill Daly in their office, expressed the situation that we encountered. They did some work on it. And then, a few days later, obviously, the Columbus went in a different direction. But I told the players, I'm here to represent you, so I'm going to go and represent you. Now, if a coach is giving you a hard time because of the way you're playing on ice, I can't. That's not my role. That's not my job. But my job is to make sure that there's not extreme circumstances. And in this particular case, there was extreme circumstances.
So that other issue, obviously not public, but it was something more than.
It was more than the pictures on the wall.
Wow. So, and I can understand you not wanting to discuss that, to keep it private. I get it. Hockey players, they're different than other athletes. And I say that because for years, just being around, and I'm partial, obviously, to hockey players, but they're always in charity work, doing different stuff. Yeah. They also are willing to play in international events. They want to. Where other sports, that's the last thing they want to do. They want to get away from it, it seems. They don't do that. When you look at that, the personality of hockey players in international hockey, and just say the Olympics are coming, how are you going to deal with the possibility then when we look at the situation now in Russia with the Ukraine and Russian players? Because I've seen things, guys calling, take their endorsements away and this and that. I mean, they have nothing to do with, Putin's decision to do what he did. And you just see so many absurd statements from people talking about, Russian players and should they play or not, or should they get endorsements because the country they were born in decided to do something that they had no part of. How do you deal with that?
When it comes to play, Olympics is the IOC. We have no jurisdiction over whether or not to let Russia play in the Olympics. That's all the IOC. So when it comes to the 2026 games, if we can work everything out where we have NHL players playing in there, that's going to be a decision made on a larger level. When it comes to World Cup of Hockey, the first tournament that we trying to put together will be all NHL hockey players. Now, I'm not sure what it's going to look like. We'll figure that out. But let's assume for a moment that we have a full World Cup of Hockey tournament in 2028. Let's just assume it's going to be there. We also have to go by the rules of the IIHF because there'll be other than NHL players playing in the best on best tournament. So it's kind of like there are higher governing rules that we have to see with Russian players, and if Russian players can play in the tournament. The PA represents Russian players. I mean, I've had some conversations. I'm going to have more. I think that when it comes to endorsement deals and things like that, I mean, the United States and other countries might take sanctions against Russia for what they're doing in Ukraine. But I still think, the players in the NHL, you're right. They're here. They're playing in the NHL. They're not in Russia. They can make a decision whether or not to pull out of Ukraine or not pull out of Ukraine. And I think, stereotyping our NHL players that are Russian is wrong to do that. And it's something that I will. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of that right now. Seen a lot of that, and a lot of that happened prior to my tenure as the PA head. But I would defend our players in that case. When it comes to playing in tournaments, that is something that obviously it's. I'm not passing the buck to the IOC, and I'm not passing the buck to the IIHF, but that's their rules and regulations, and then making it based off of the impacts of what other teams and other players will say. There are other countries that won't play in the tournament if Russian players are playing in there. So there's a lot of emotion there too, and it's all worldwide stuff. And I'm hoping, praying for the world and for Ukraine that this war in Ukraine is. I'm hoping that people, I don't know if come to their senses is the right word, but realize that this is not something that we need to pursue anymore, and let Ukraine continue to be a country so we can get on with world business.
Yeah, that would be nice. Things are pretty unsettled internationally right now, not too good. You brought up the Arizona issue. How the hell are you going to be able to deal with that and fix that? I know the league certainly got to do something about it, but how do you coerce them or get them to say, hey, enough with Arizona, we move on to another city, or we get an arena built here, because it's right. Playing in a college rink. I mean, come on.
Yeah, no, it's first of all, it's unfair. These players are playing in a college arena. These are NHL, National Hockey League players. I've said it more than one time. They're the second tenant in the building on top of it. So they're not even the primary tenant. So the main locker rooms go to the colleges. The players are in a different locker room. The workout spaces, all this stuff. I mean, the players don't get to experience a home game in a stadium of 18, 19,000 people, which is wrong. And I think that we have to fix that. So I went down to Arizona at the end of the season last year. Arizona was playing Vancouver. Myself, Ron Hainsey, Don Zavolo, the lawyer for the PA. We went down there. We met with some players. We met with Gary Bettman was there, Bill Daly. I met with the owner of Arizona. I met with the president of Arizona. And at that point, there was a ballot question going in front of the voters in Tempe to approve the use of land to build a stadium there, in a larger development, but a stadium was part of it. The voters voted that down. So I've been talking to Gary a lot about this and saying that we need resolution on this. And, I have not talked to the owner of the Arizona Coyotes, but I understand that he has been in conversation in a couple of spots in Arizona to build a rink. They need to come to a resolution pretty soon because, once you buy the land, it's going to take a couple of years, more than a couple of years, a few years to build and permit something. So if that doesn't happen, then we're going to have another conversation. I've kept the players posted on what we're doing here, so hopefully within the next couple of months, we have some clarity on where we go with it. Hopefully there'll be a shovel in the ground somewhere building a new stadium if that's the course they're going to go. If not, we have to think about where they're going to play next.
Did you play hockey as a kid growing up in dirty Dorchester?
Dirty Dorchester. No, I didn't play ice hockey. When I was a kid, I had cancer at the age of 7. So I was treated at Dana-Farber and Jimmy Fund and Children's Hospital for about 4 years. But we played a lot of street hockey. We played a lot of gym hockey, a lot of that back in this neighborhood. Yeah, I didn't play the ice hockey though. But we followed it. Chris Nyland. I remember watching Chris Nyland play for the Canadians, man. I remember that.
I remember Mayor Flynn talked about maybe having me arrested because I got in a fight in the hallway. Remember the brawl in the hall? And he come out the next day and said, geez, there's one thing about fighting on the ice, but, we got to look into that. We may have to arrest people if they're fighting in the halls of the Boston Garden. But I never got arrested, which was good. So that's a good thing.
It was a different. But plus, it was the jersey you're wearing. That was more the message you were sending back then. That was a real rivalry back then.
Yeah, it was. It's kind of cooled off.
If you're like me and you're going to play some golf this summer, you have to check out this hidden gem. Windmill Heights sits atop the beautiful hills in Notre Dame de El Perot. They have affordable rates and they offer customized membership opportunities for all levels. If you want to book a tee time, call 514-453-7177. Hit them straight. If you love your pet like I love my St. Bernard Adele, you'll want to feed them a balanced, biologically appropriate raw diet. The reason I've chosen Formula Raw is because all blends of their food are locally sourced and they consist of exclusively human-grade meat and organs, as well as fruits and vegetables. And all products used are hormone and antibiotic-free. So like I said, if you love your pet like I love Adele, you'll choose Formula Raw. Make sure you go to formularaw.com and use the promo code RawKnux at checkout to receive 10% off your first order. That's RawKnux, RawKnux.
So, I've seen some things about expansion here and there, and they're supposedly building a new arena in Atlanta, which I don't get why they'd even consider that. I know Bettman said they're not considering expansion right now. Can you see them putting more teams in this league at some point?
I only really know that Gary Bettman hasn't talked to me about expansion. I've asked him if there is expansion. I'd love to talk to him about it. He claims he's focused on the 30. Not when I say claims, he's focused on the 32 teams. I guess you can never rule it out. I think that expansion. When you think about expansion, it gives more people, more players the opportunity to play in the league. Brings in more revenue. I think if they're going to expand, the last two teams they expanded were Vegas and Seattle. The success in those two teams is unbelievable. I'm not just talking success on the ice. Seattle, I think Seattle and Vegas are in the top 10 most, financially supported teams. So they've really, and they did it right. I mean, those teams, obviously Vegas won the Stanley Cup, but I think if you're going to put teams in markets, you need to make sure that they're going to be set up for success. I know that Atlanta, even when I think of Atlanta, I think of the Flames when they were, as a kid, they were playing. The Flames were there, and then they left, and the Trashers came in, and then they weren't successful. And I think that in learning a little bit about Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, the success isn't necessarily in the city; it's in the suburbs. So I know the Braves moves out to the suburbs. The Falcons are obviously in the city, so it'd be interesting to see how that works out. And then, I mean, also the thing about expansion is, I think, an opportunity to spread the game around the country. You have down the south, you have Dallas, you have obviously Arizona if they make it, Florida, Tampa. So trying to spread the game geographically around the country, I think that's probably the mindset there. But I'm not sure exactly when and if it should happen, or if and when it should happen.
So the NHL had a ban on players supporting social causes with their equipment and stuff like that. And then obviously the tape issue came up. I was kind of happy, to be honest, that they did away with that as a team, having to wear jerseys. And I understand certainly a lot of people, it started, I think, with military nights. And then all of a sudden another group wants to come in, another group. What's your take on that? And I know each player is able to now, because you got involved, if they want to use pride tape, they can use pride tape. But what the overall issue of that, you think it's good the NHL kind of took that out?
I think that, again, this issue started right before I took the job. And then when I got the job, this was like the first issue that kind of came down. I was a little surprised that there was such backlash on jerseys. And I didn't realize that, I don't think it was mandated, but a player didn't want to wear a jersey for whatever reason. He didn't wear a jersey. It became a story. And then it went from locker room to locker room to locker room. And I think we're heading in the, I think the league is clearly working on inclusion. There's a player inclusion committee that's put together, trying to create more inclusivity for the game, both on the ice and off the ice. I think that's important for the growth of the hockey. And I think that the ruling reversing that the tape was a good move, and allowing people to put any tape they want on their stick in pre-games and warm-ups is a good way to move. There's going to be a social cause that comes up that teams are going to want to support, and cities are going to want to support. And if you have a ban on everything, then you can't support it. And I think back to like the Boston Marathon bombing here. After the bombing, Boston Strong kind of came out of that very unfortunate circumstance. The Red Sox, the Bruins, Patriots, Celtics, they changed their colors for a couple of nights. The Red Sox still wear the yellow and blue, light blue shirt on Marathon Monday. And I think that if the league didn't change, a lot of that probably wouldn't happen. But I think giving people the opportunity to express themselves during practice is fine. It's unfortunate it became such an issue. And, there were players in the league that didn't want to wear the pride jerseys because of whether it was political beliefs or religious beliefs. And, I was a state rep in 2004 when marriage equality became the law of Massachusetts. And a friend of mine, Liz Maya, a representative from Jamaica Plain, called me up and asked me to support the marriage equality, and I did. And I took a lot of grief for it in 2004, but for me, I felt it was the right way to go. And so, I think that not everyone supported. Everyone had different reasons for not supporting it at the time. I think as time goes on, people will understand, but I think that the league, what we did yesterday with the tape was the right move. I think the jerseys just bring a highlight to people. I don't think we necessarily need jerseys on the ice. I think if people want to throw tape on the stick, if they want to sign jerseys, they can. And now if people, the events that we supported, I think, and I could be wrong, but, I don't think we have an autism awareness night. So if people want to put tape on the stick for autism awareness, they can. If they want to put domestic violence on their stick, they can. If they want to put suicide prevention on their stick, they can. If they want to do, there's a football player in the NFL that supports a stuttering organization. He stutters and he supports an organization. So now players can support any organization they want. Put on their stick, maybe raffle the stick off later for auction. I think that's the right move to make. And as we move forward here, I mean, the world is so, social media and the press and everyone is so political. No one's going to focus on the 22 players or the 21 players that are actually wearing the jersey. Everyone's going to focus on the one player that's not. So I think doing this is the right step in the right direction.
All right. Holding all these different positions and different jobs over the years, I guess when things are new, we know it's exciting. There's a lot to learn. We get going. How does this job compare to all the other positions you held? One. Two, out of all the positions you held over the years, what was probably the most difficult thing you had to deal with in one of those jobs? The toughest thing you had to deal with?
Yeah. This job compares probably more to being mayor than any other role I had. And the reason I say that, there's a lot of moving pieces. You have to respond almost instantaneously. You don't have time to think about it and come up with a better
You got to get on a plane now, right? Instead of jumping in the car and going to a neighborhood.
So I think that it's more like being mayor. The press, hockey press is very a lot of scrutiny there, and they're on top of everything. So when you're the mayor of Boston, there's a lot of scrutiny there. And, so there's a lot of similarities there to all that. The other part of that, probably the two toughest days, two of a couple toughest days I've had as mayor. And mayor was probably the one was we lost early in my tenure as mayor. We lost two firefighters in a fire on Beacon Street. Lieutenant Eddie Walsh and firefighter Michael Kennedy. It was on Beacon Street in Boston, and it was awful to be standing in the street. One of the firefighters was still in the building as the fire was going on. One was taken out, died on his way to the hospital, and then having to go to the families afterwards. Eddie Walsh had 3 young kids at home and his wife, Kristen, and in West Roxbury, lived in West Roxbury, and it was tough. It was tough, and as the mayor, you're trying to you can't say the right thing, but be there for compassion.
You try and console the families, right? But
another day as mayor, I was in Philadelphia actually at the Democratic National Convention, and we had a little boy that walked out of the L Street bathhouse and went into the water and drowned. And Kaiser Willis, and I got the call in Philly, and I got on a plane and come home. It was awful. And then we lost, another little boy in Southie in a car accident. So those are days, and homicides and shootings. Those are days that are just tough days. And I'll tell you one other story just real quickly. So I was not the mayor during the Marathon bombing. Tom Menino was, but I was the mayor the 1-year anniversary of the bombing. As you think about leading up to the 1-year anniversary, Vice President then Biden came into town. President Obama came in right after the bombing. Vice President Biden came in the 1-year anniversary day. And that day in Boston was a pretty somber day because it was 1-year anniversary. We were remembering Lindsay Lou, Crystal Campbell, Sean Collier, and Martin Richard, who died in the bombing. And in that weekend, thinking it was going to be a somber weekend, was just an amazing weekend in Boston. It was leading up to the marathon. Survivors came back to the finish line. We took back the finish line. It was amazing. So in a weekend, it just shows you how it goes from being a somber, remembrance of a tragedy a year ago, and then the strength of Boston, the resiliency of the city, and the resiliency of the survivors, 3 days later, and celebrating people. It was just amazing in Boston. So those are different things I've experienced in my life as mayor, and there's other ones too. But the biggest ones are probably the two firefighters that died, and then Kaiser Willis's death, and
for
Colin
sure.
McGrath's death as well.
That little Martin Richard, when you think those sick bastards, what they did, they walked right up behind them and put that thing down behind. It's
awful. I mean, you think about that
sickening.
Day. I don't know if you saw the Netflix documentary, I watched that, and I knew a lot was going on that point. And like I said, I was running for mayor. We were running for mayor then, but that was awful. Like when you think about how close they were to the Richards family and to Crystal Campbell and Lindsay Lou, and then later on they ambushed Sean Collier over in Watertown and killed him. It's just a horrible, horrible situation.
Yeah, tough to deal with. Well, that hopefully it doesn't happen again. The way the world is today, it's crazy. But you know, I guess, and I'm not asking for myself, but did you think? And I remember when I played, we had our collective bargaining agreement come up, and we were asked to give money to the former players who kind of blazed the way for the Players Association, and we did. Do you think that's something that will be brought up again in the next agreement? And do you think it's fair to give the former players something?
Yeah, I think that, I'm a person that believes that we stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us. I always say that when I speak at a retirement party for a union, I talk about that we stand on the shoulders of people that came before us, so we can't forget them. I have one of the first people I met with when I took this role, was Glenn Healy. And I've stayed very close to Glenn. We had a meeting in Boston a couple months ago with Bobby Orr and Ray and Glenn, and we talked about players. We talked about, Pat LaFontaine does a lot in this space with the league. Rob Zaminer from the PA does a lot in this space, the league. So I think that, as we think about moving forward, we always want to be able to help players. I know there's different generations of players that older players, Johnny Busick era, they really didn't have anything. The next generation had a little more. You guys had a little more pension. The pension today is a really good pension for the future retirees. So I think we can't forget the past, and we have to do everything we can to be in assistance. I've talked to Glenn Healy many times, and he's told me so many stories of players down in their luck. And what people need to understand too, and not need that, but I always want to say this to everyone listening: like our heroes that we watched growing up, like I did growing up. Sometimes those players, when they're done, they don't have anything else to fall back on. And some of those players get into depression, they get stuck with alcoholism, drug addiction, and they have no place to turn. And I do think it's important for us never to forget them and try and find places to help our former players as best we can. I got a call from Dick Redmond, early on in my time here as the PA head. And so Dick called, I got Dick's number, I called him up, and he was explaining to me who he was. And I said, I know who you are. I was a kid watching you play with Brad Park on the line and the Boston guy, and you wore number 6, and he was all excited. Yeah. And those players, that's why I think when I talked about Unlimit earlier, we launched Unlimit. It's making sure that we're preparing our players for success after the game of hockey, so that the people that came before us that fell on hard times because they didn't have a pension, because they didn't make $1 million contracts, because they didn't have anything, because they might have got screwed out of their money. We have something set in place for them for the future players. So we learned from what wasn't done in the past and put it to the front, but we still can't forget the past players.
Yeah, I remember at 92, like we went on a 10-day strike before the play, my last year. And, I forfeited a good chunk of money that was my last season in the NHL in 92. And then there's been subsequently 3 lockouts. September 15th, 2026 is the new collective bargaining agreement supposed to be in place. What are some of the biggest issues for the players and for you representing them going into that agreement? And I'm sure you don't want to think of lockout, but it could get to that point. What are some of the biggest issues, and how do you avert that happening again? Because it's happened.
Well, we haven't really started talking to the players yet about what they're looking at, what we'd be talking about in the collective bargaining agreement. We will start that at some point soon in the near future. But I can tell you this: we'll be ready for a conversation with the league on collective bargaining, and we'll be positioned to. I'm hoping, and today as we talk here today, I don't see a lockout coming. I think it would be insane for the owners to lock out the players because you're trying to grow the game, and that will just put the game back another few years. And I think for me, it's really about keeping conversations going, keeping my conversations going with Gary and the league. We're working together to grow the game of hockey at the moment. and working with, letting the owners know how we feel. And I think there's a tremendous upside in the game of hockey that they haven't taken advantage of yet, meaning the league, the owners of the league. And we want to be part of that. And, when it comes to collective bargaining agreement, I've done lots of agreements. I've been involved in nasty agreements. I've settled nasty strikes. And, I can tell you this, the Players Association will be ready for the negotiation, and we'll be a willing participant as long as the players are treated fairly. We're all in.
So looking at the agreement, when you come in and went over that whole agreement right now, looking at it before you even talk to any players, is there something there that you said, you know what, I think this could be better?
Again, I want to talk to the players because everyone has a different perspective on what we should be talking about. I mean, I think about, like you think about the pension. The pension was brought in a few years ago, and the cost of living is included in the pension. So that's a good positive. We want to make sure we continue the pension system moving forward in a positive way. It's a multi-employer pension plan, so that's a good thing. We want to make sure that the players are treated fairly. I mean, a lot of it comes down to compensation and salaries, but it's also the little things, per diems, practices, time off, family time. All that stuff is all part of what we're going to look at and talk to the players about. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, when I say this again, the public that's watching the podcast today, the hockey contract is no different than a construction contract. You get days off, you get all that opportunity, and you think about a hockey player, like when you're not playing, you're practicing. You're always engaged in the game. So you're a human being that has a family, have problems and challenges and sick kids and families that you have to deal with and parents and things like that. So you want to make sure that players are treated fairly. And so I haven't really, I've just said when I've gone around talking to players, start thinking about what it is you might want to think about in negotiations when they come up. But we're still a bit early to be getting into fine tuning what it would be.
Well, looking back at the COVID situation, the league had to hold money in escrow from the players, and the players had to basically pay the owners back. Was that it? Because they lost money?
Pay the owners back.
Can you maybe explain that in a nutshell? Because a lot of people ask me, what's the escrow all about? And are the players all paid up now? They had to pay the owners back because of money they lost because of no fannies in the seats.
So I'll try and do the best I can. So you take the league, okay? You take all the revenue goes into a pot. It's a 50-50 split. 50% goes to the players, 50% goes to the owners. In the players' part, it pays their contracts, it pays their benefits, and all of that gets paid out of that. There's a salary cap, obviously, that we have in the NHL. Salary cap is a team can't pay more than that. And what you have to do within the 50% share you have to pay all your bills off. The escrow is there in case that you don't get it, you don't have enough money coming in to pay your bills off. Escrow during COVID was like as high as 18%, which meant that if a player got $10 million a year, or got usually $1 million a year, 18% of that was held to make sure all the bills were paid at the end of the year.
Okay.
And, because the COVID year, there was one season, there was no fans in the stands, so you had no revenue coming in there. So now what we're looking at the salary cap next year to go up about $4 million. We're looking at revenue going up a good amount in the NHL, I think about 5%. And depending on a couple of what happens with companies, the players are paying 6% escrow this year, and the goal is trying to get as much as that 6% back in players' pockets. The way you're successful with that is by growing the game of hockey. The more revenue that comes in for the game of hockey, the better it is. So when you think about sports, football is about a $13 billion a year industry. Baseball is about 11, basketball is 10, hockey is about 6. So there's so much room for growth there. I mean, you don't compare and compete with the team in front of you, but there's opportunity for growth there to grow the game of hockey, whether it's international, whether it's domestically here in the United States and Canada.
Grassroots stuff.
In Europe. So there's opportunities for us to grow the game of hockey. And I think that we have to think about how do we do that. And that's one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that I want to do that. So we don't, as a union, we don't just run the collective bargaining agreement. We actually look at how we want to grow the game of hockey. And I've had conversations with Gary and the leagues working with the PA and other ideas about it. But I think we really have to think about moving forward. How do we grow the game of hockey? The more revenue coming in, the better it is for the league.
Do you ever see the NHL expand into Europe? Could that be in the plans at some point? Because boy, so many players come from over there, right? And I know, like, trying to get teams to play, and you go to Europe for a two-week road trip or something. I don't know, but what do you think of that? And you think it's a possibility?
That's a hard one. As a fan, or in the role I'm in now, realistically, I don't know if it can happen. I know that the NFL is thinking about it. Little different situation. You play once a week. You have time to recover. So if let's say hypothetically there's a team in England and you're an NFL team, you fly from New England to England. It's about this from Boston to England. It's about the same from Boston to LA. So you'd have to that's different sport. I think when you're talking about hockey, even basketball or baseball, it makes it more complicated because you get teams in the Midwest, teams out west. They're going to be doing an East Coast trip. Then they have to do a real East Coast trip and go overseas. I think it would be really hard to do that to players because of the time change and because of the travel. I just don't know that. I don't know if you could pull that off. But I do think that if we have a good plan, we can do a lot more games in Europe internationally to grow the game of hockey over in Europe. Along with, most of those countries have their own hockey federations and have their own PAs over there. But I think there's opportunities to grow the game of hockey and create more opportunities for European players to play in NHL. There's a lot right now. I think about a third of the league is European players.
Yeah, for sure. I remember back in the 80s when, we were talking about having Russian players come over, and we're like, no. But the league expanded. We were only 24 teams at the time.
Yeah.
But you just could never put the quality on ice with just North American players with the number of teams. And, what was this? I just, God, slipped my, 82 games this season. Now, when I watch the regular season sometimes, I don't want to watch because the product sometimes is like, it's just not there. Like some of those games, like playoff hockey, there's nothing like it. I've always said if they could just knock 10 games off the schedule, that the in-season product would be so much better. Guys would have more time to recover. It's 10 games. The owners would never go for that.
The owners would never go for it, but even the players, the contracts change then. Because your contract is based on 80, 81, 82 games. Now you're playing 10 less games, and that's less revenue coming into the league and less opportunity. So I think that would make it difficult. I'm not sure what the magic number is. You're right, though. There's nothing like playoff hockey. Playoff hockey is amazing. I don't know if anyone watched TV last night. ESPN had on 16 hockey games last night. It was just amazing. Every team was playing. But there is excitement. I think that the one thing I think we have to make sure when we're doing TV, I'm getting away from the question you asked, but I think we have to make sure on TV we have good national TV contracts now, TNT and ESPN. Before, when it was on the outdoor network, I remember being a fan wanting to watch hockey, and you couldn't find the outdoor network anywhere. Now it really is about creating opportunity and access. I'm not sure what the magic number is for games, though. It's hard to say. I think baseball goes through the same thing with the 162 games. Is that too long? Football wants to have more games. They're up to 17 now. Basketball pretty much same as hockey. So it's hard to say what the magic number is. But if you cut back on games at this point, it changes the whole dynamic of the sport.
Well, for me, the greatest player ever was Bobby Orr. And you talk about the health of the players, and I was just part of that. Took part in that concussion study, Boston University, over in Boston, and I'm going to be followed up on each and every year moving forward. That's been a big issue. I wasn't part of the concussion lawsuit. I didn't want to be part of it. I did what I did. I accept full responsibility. No one ever made me fight, or no one ever made me go play because, if I had a concussion or I was questionable, no one ever forced me to do anything that way. The greatest player for me ever, Bobby Orr, believes that the red line should be put back in the game of hockey. He said he'd like to see players come up the ice together and pass their way through the other team and get to the opposing net. I don't believe, and they say the league, that they worry about the health of the players. And certainly with no red line, the speed of the game today, the violent collisions that can happen out there, guys' health certainly, and I know guys accept it and they'll play, but then you get guys who suffer severe injuries. And do you think the league would ever look at doing that, and would the players buy into it?
They have a player, a rules committee the players are on, and that's really what I mean. That's one area that I would never give my opinion on, because I think you have to leave it to the players. And there are certain things that I will give my opinion on, but when it comes to actually the game and the rules and regulations, I didn't play it at this level, and I don't think I certainly don't have the expertise to talk about it. And as a fan, obviously, being a fan, you think about growing up in Boston, as you know, you go to a game every night. There was goals and fights every night.
Yeah.
Every night. I mean, my first memory of Bruins is 74. And so 75, 76, 77, the 80 games, the seasons you were in Montreal, the fights in the Garden with Kordic and Miller and all that. I remember all that. It was exciting back then. But then you think about now I'm in the role, and you read stories and like you, Chris, and Brent Myerson and other people that I've talked to personally and read their books and looked at these studies. You think about, okay, that's fun for a fan, but that's a person on the ice that's going to have long-term impacts. And so I would leave all that. My personal thing is I leave that to the players, and Ron Hainsey, Joe Ricci is part of that player committee. We have Chris Campoli. We have a lot of former players on staff that I depend on what they say.
Cool. Certainly, just a couple more here before I let you go. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. You're obviously very proud of your Irish heritage growing up in Boston, but mom and dad are both from Ireland. Mom from RawKnux. It seems like a lot of people came from that area in Ireland. My great-grandparents are from Kilcogan, not far from RawKnux in Galway. Your parents coming over, they met over here. How was that growing up? Mom and dad being from Ireland and then growing up in that section of Boston, Dorchester, back in the day.
When you're a kid, you don't think about it.
Right.
I grew up in a 3-decker house. We lived on the first floor of a 3-decker. Those of you that don't know what 3-decker is, it's a house with 3 stories. First, second, third floor, long hallway down the middle, 1 bathroom, and how many people in the house? 1 bathroom every floor. And you don't realize at the time, but as I get older, I started to think about where my parents came from. My father came from Carna, which is a little further back than RawKnux. They had nothing. Like my mother, they grew up. My father's one of 13, stone floor. My mother was one of 7. They had a farm. They lived on a farm. Then the farm was to raise food for the family, to keep the family fed. I mean, they weren't making millions of dollars. They didn't have cattle to sell. Right. It wasn't that type of farm. So you learn about that, and I think subconsciously, you hopefully you earn that work ethic that your parents had. My father became a construction union laborer in Boston, local 223. My mother did domestic work, and it was pretty. I mean, growing up in our neighborhood, we didn't have a lot, but we didn't know that. It was awesome. It was a great neighborhood to grow up in. It was great. We had as being West Roxbury, we had rivalries. We couldn't go to Southie. We couldn't go to West Roxbury. We couldn't go to Hyde Park. We couldn't go to Charlestown. No one really crossed the border anywhere. Everyone kind of stayed on their corner. But it was as a person growing up there, it's also who I am. It gave me that understanding. In Boston, as you know this, we're really known by parishes. So I'm a St. Margaret's guy. Are you Holy Name or St. Teresa's?
St. Teresa's.
Yeah, so St. Teresa's, I'm St. Margaret's. So it was kind of like even down there. So that's lost a little bit today, and I'm kind of sad for the kids that's lost. we had a real active CYO back in the day. We had Father Coyne from West Roxbury, who was our priest, who came to St. Margaret's when we were in 8th grade. Just like, first Bruins game, first Celtics game. He just the experience we had was amazing. So I'm proud. I'm grateful where I grew up and had 2 Irish parents, immigrant parents, who came here to work hard and raised us here. And I have family back in Ireland. I haven't gone back in a little bit, but I go back a good amount. I get a little frustrated when people criticize immigrants today because we all came from somewhere. And my father didn't experience this. Your grandfather might have. Like in the turn of the 19th century, 19th, 20th century, they didn't want Irish here. They were regarded as pigs and dogs and everything else. That it's changed today, obviously, but now different nationalities are regarded like that by people. But it's tough. But it was a great place to grow up.
Yeah, no question about it. I miss home, being here. You're gonna obviously the office is in Toronto. You commute every week.
Back and forth. Right now we're beginning fall tour. So what fall tour is every beginning of the season, the PA, myself and Ronnie and a few other people go around and we talk to all the teams, all the players on the fall tour. We let them know about the PA. This one for me is the first one. So we're introducing who I am and then talking about what we've done up until this point for players and for the PA. So we do it every year. So for the next 2.5 months, we'll be on the road in a big way. I'm fortunate enough today to be in Boston. We have 4 teams coming through here, so I get a chance to hit 4 teams this week.
Oh, that's nice. So how many? There's 32 teams. How many have you got done?
We've done 7 to this point.
How's that for you going in? The first time and going into the NHL locker room and saying, "Here I am. I'm going to represent you guys." How's the feeling around the league?
Well, at first, like you said, we didn't get into this earlier, but one thing I found about hockey players, they're the most humble people in the world, most down-to-earth people, and most honest people. So when you walk in, I don't want to appear like I'm lecturing to them. And every single one is, I think, at least the feedback has been great. So we're in there having good conversation with the players, and it's been good. Now, after 7 of them, myself and Ron Hainsey have our little thing going. So we have it down pat. It's the same conversation, all the players talking about what's important, escrow, hockey-related revenue, talking about international hockey, talking about situations that we've experienced, talking about wearable tech, all the top issues of the pension, healthcare, all the top issues that are important to their life that they might not think of on a daily basis that we're doing.
That's for sure. I remember back as a young kid, as a player, I was like, player rep would get up and speak and, you'd listen and, you'd catch some of it you wouldn't. You didn't realize in the early days how important it was to take note of all that stuff. So,
I try to get their attention. I try to focus. Even the younger guys, I stand around them and talk. I'm like, guys, you might not pay attention to what I'm saying, what I'm doing. Just listen, because this is going to be important at some point. And I think it's important to have a very active union, not just during negotiation, but throughout the other seasons. Because if it's only during negotiations, and you don't do the job of explaining who you are, what you're all about, and what we're fighting for, then you're not going to have a fair shot at negotiations. If the players realize it and they support you, you have a better negotiation conversation going on.
Yeah, it's funny. When I retired from hockey, I went to Emerson College. I took public speaking, and I got an A in that. The best I ever did in college. And I took another course, mediation, negotiation, and conflict management.
Yeah.
And I got an A in that. And I forget that it's been so long. I forget they gave us a word like PASS for good negotiations. I forget what each one meant, but it was interesting, and I'm certainly looking forward to see what happens here in 2026. All right, I'm gonna let you go, but one thing, you got to write the first line of your eulogy. What is it?
Oh God. Marty Walsh grew up in St. Margaret's Parish, Dorchester.
And died a sober man.
Died a sober man. Honestly, Chris, I think the biggest thing for me is everyone talks about legacy, what legacy is like. And my legacy, I don't need a building named after me. I don't need a statue named after me. I just want to have made an impact in people's lives, whether that's anything I've done in life, whether it's in recovery, whether it's a state rep, whether it's talking to a player. Again, it's not about accomplishing the best contract that the players have ever gotten. It's about helping that one player that needed help, that I was able to help and put them on a pathway. I think that's what I want in life. And I don't know how you put that in words, but that's who I am, what I'm all about. I'm not looking for, I don't need accolades.
Well, you certainly helped a lot of people. I know, for one, my nephew, who lost his dad to a police officer back in 2000, and you helped him, and I appreciate that like you don't know. So I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there like that, and I want to wish you nothing but luck and good fortune moving forward here, especially coming September 2026. Yeah. So we don't
we'll
see another
one. Chris. Next time I'm on the podcast, I might be dropping little chitlets then to see what they have to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you get up this way, it'd be good to get together. We can grab a bite to eat. And have you visited here yet, Montreal?
Not yet. Last time I was in Montreal, it was I think it was last time I was at a hockey game in Montreal. I was up there a couple of years ago as mayor, but it was 1992. Cam Neely scored a goal over Patrick Wash's shoulder. So that's the last time I was in the Forum.
Yeah, I must have been there. I must have been there, 92.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Raw Knuckles podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.